Hi, my name is Joyce. I'm 62 years old, and I have been out of a verbally abusive relationship for almost a year now. I was with my ex-husband for almost 31 years, the last 17 of which were verbally abusive. The first time he abused me, we were sitting in a restaurant having what I thought was a nice time. And I was homesick. I had been out of Denver for about 4 or 5 weeks. He was in his new job, and I remember saying to him that I was a little homesick, but I was in this. We were going to do this together. And he looked me in the eye and screamed at me in the restaurant and told me I was a stupid, selfish effing bitch. And I immediately started to cry. I remember this like it was yesterday. It was 1998. And he looked at me and he said, "If you're going to act like a baby, I'm leaving." And I said, "Don't bother, I'll leave." And I got up and left the restaurant and walked 2 or 3 miles home. He came home about 2 hours later and apologized and blamed his outburst on stress. And back then, he acknowledged the fact that he actually did scream at me and curse at me in a public restaurant. And I chalked it up to his explanation, which was stress, work stress, job stress, the move, the culture, everything. And then it happened again about 3 or 4 weeks later. And then it happened again. And then it happened again. And every time it happened, it got worse. I made a lot of excuses for his behavior. I felt bad for him because I knew he was under a lot of stress at work. And when he would be abusive, many times I took that on as, well, I must have done something to cause this. There had to have been something that I did to start this. And then I realized also that when he was in the part of his cycle, in the part of his pattern where he was really nice, I lived for those spaces of time where I could pretend that we were this happy couple and that he was this good guy. And that part, and it sounds crazy, but that part would erase for me what was going to come next, which was the next verbal attack. Any woman who has been in this knows that you pretend, especially when your husband has this way of being in the outside world and presenting himself as this great guy. Everybody loved him. He was successful. He was nice. People told me he is the nicest guy I've ever met. And he was so good at portraying this charismatic, nice demeanor. I knew it wasn't normal to get up every morning worried about how this person was going to treat you, this person that's supposed to love you. I didn't know what to do. It sounds crazy that I didn't know what to do, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't think people would believe me. I very much became the corporate wife, supporting him, entertaining customers, people from his company. That became very critical to him. Very important that I was involved in all that. My life was not my own. The best way I can explain that is every thought I had, everything I did was about his life, where he wanted to live, where he needed to work, where he did this, where he did that. And if I didn't go along with what he wanted, I knew the rage would start. I didn't see it coming, and I think part of that was because I chose not to look at the signs. I guess it's been about 1.5 years ago. I was in a bookstore, big bookstore, and I knew at that point in time I needed to start finding a way to get out of and away from the verbal abuse. And I literally bumped into a table that had a book. I went to grab it so it wouldn't fall, and the book was The Verbally Abusive Relationship book by Patricia Evans. And I immediately bought it, took it home, read it cover to cover at least 6 times, and that's when it clicked. I wasn't ready to leave. I didn't know how to leave. I was scared to leave. I still thought after all these years, there's got to be something that I can do to fix this, to get him to see what he's doing. What I came to realize after reading the book especially is that this behavior was totally irrational, and I was trying to deal with it in a rational way while pretending that everything was okay. It sounds crazy. So in April of 2011, I saw an attorney for the first time. I started to put a plan in place because I knew this was a man that I could not sit down with and say, hey, let's separate because of your anger issues, because he denied he had anger issues. He denied everything. He had gotten to the point where less than a minute after he raged at me, he would deny the rage. You know, when someone shows you who they are, believe it, you know, early on, because what they do and what they say many times are two different things. I became very robotic. I just put the plan in place, and on June 3rd of 2015, I served him with papers. That first night of June 3rd was the first good night's sleep I'd had in years, in my bed alone, and it felt amazing. Took a long time coming, but I learned that I allowed that to happen, and I'm never going to allow that again. He was relentless that night with the texts and the phone calls and the emails. I didn't respond to anything. I didn't talk to him for 2 weeks. And he called and he cried and he cried and he cried and begged me to come back. And I knew that was the pattern. I had done some very good reading about this. Women who are verbally abused didn't cause it. But we take it on like we did until we're ready to get out. I have been legally divorced for 8 months, and I finally know what peace is. I know who I am, or at least I'm beginning to figure out who I am. I still have a long way to go to know exactly who I am at 62, but what I do know is that I can wake up in the morning, and if I want coffee, I can make my own coffee. If I want to eat whatever I want for breakfast, that's my choice. Anybody who's watching this or listening, there's always a way out. There's always a way out. I know what the fear feels like, and I know what the hopelessness feels like, and I know that you can get so caught up, and especially so many women will leave and go back, and when they go back, it's worse. Just know that if you leave, get help. There's help out there. Put a plan together. Don't just run out the door with the clothes on your back. Put a plan together. You deserve to have a good, happy, healthy life, and no one has the right to take that away from you. 3 years ago, a woman's place for me was being under his thumb and being told what I was. And a woman's place for me today is never doing that again.